Hello everyone, this is a presentation on writing, revising, and proofreading. So in this presentation, we will discuss how writing, revision, and proofreading are different, as well as strategies for revision and proofreading. The triage will be a part of these strategies. How do we often think about the writing process? Well, typically we might break it down into two parts: writing and proofreading or editing. The writing stage is where we get everything down on paper. There might be some pre-writing, maybe some lists or concept maps, and then maybe we produce a rough draft that turns into a final draft. Now, the proofreading and editing stage, on the other hand, is when we're almost done with that paper. We just look at minimal issues such as grammar or choice and checking the citation style. But the biggest issue of thinking about the writing process in these two stages is that it doesn't allow for making larger changes to your writing. For example, we might need to change our whole thesis because it doesn't reflect what we're talking about in the paper. Or maybe we need to add new pieces of evidence or quotations, or we need to restructure the whole paper because it doesn't flow logically. This is where revision comes in, being open to making those big changes rather than the small scale tweaks of typical proofreading and editing. And this is why we should think about the writing process more so in more than two stages. So the writing stage, the revision stage, and then the proofreading and editing stage is what we have right here in front of us. So since we've already been through the first and the third stages, I'm only going to go over the revision stage. However, if you'd like to pause the video and look over the first and the third stages to see if you're on track, please feel free to do so. The revision stage is where you can go back to your assignment sheet or rubric, or even original notes that you took in class, and determine if the paper is going in the direction that you and your instructor wants it to. This is also time for peer review, other people to look at your paper and give you feedback. And after revising, this is where you will have this final draft that just needs to be looked over. Here are some things you can consider during revision. What are the actual goals of this assignment? Or what are the goals I hope to achieve by writing this? Has my focus changed or shifted since I began working on this project? If so, are there remnants of the original idea in this draft? So for instance, is there an old thesis statement here that doesn't really match what I'm writing? Am I framing or setting up my argument in the best way possible? Is my thesis clear? Do my thesis and body match? Do my major supporting points connect to one another? Am I doing enough with my evidence? Am I explaining it enough? Am I connecting it to my thesis? Where can I usefully expand on something? Should anything in this paragraph become its own paragraph? And then finally, where is there excess material or fluff? Are there examples I could cut? Am I explaining too much or repeating myself? So all of these things you can consider during the revision stage, but you don't want to consider all of these things because number one, you don't want to overwhelm yourself. Number two, some of these items are actually connected to each other, so if you change one large portion of your paper, it might fix another part or another question listed here. So for instance, if you feel that your thesis isn't clear, it could be because your thesis and your body paragraphs do not match up with each other. So if you change your thesis, then you probably changed it to match your body paragraphs. But why can't I write, revise, and proofread at the same time? I need to get this done! Actually, not much gets done if you try to do all of these things at the same time. So it's better off just focusing on one thing at a time. Have you ever sat staring at your work trying to find that perfect sentence to tie a paragraph together when you're still in that writing stage? So this is what I'm talking about. First, try to get all of your thoughts down, and word choice is part of the last parts of your writing. So if you focus on the content, you're going to be much more productive, and then leave those smaller concerns at the end of your writing. But what happens when I run out of time to revise and proofread? This is where triage comes in. Triage is where you can assess your own situation and decide what is most important to work on. Tutors can also help you determine what is most important to work on as well. If things were ideal, you wouldn't have a time limit, you would have endless energy and attention to spend on this project, and everything would be important in terms of writing. However, we, meaning your instructors, your tutor, as well as yourself, understand that this isn't a reality, right? So the reality is that your time is limited and you have other things to do. You might not have much energy or attention to spend on this project, and there are certainly things within your writing that are more important than others. So all this is to say that you can still revise effectively if you approach revision and proofreading with a triage mindset. And remember, triage is assessing your personal situation and then deciding what to prioritize. So you have power in this situation. Before you ask yourself the important questions about time and resources, first reread your draft, look at your rubric, and look at your calendar and your clock. Then ask yourself, how much time do I have? What is most important to get right? And what needs work? One of the most important things about answering the time question is estimating how much time you have to work on this project before it's actually due, not just the due date. So you're estimating hours, not just days. So you'll also have to take into account other classes and assignments, work, commuting, sleeping, if you sleep, which you should, and things like these. You'll also want to think about factors that might affect you getting your work done, like noise, library closing times, or coffee shop closing times, etc., wherever you work, fatigue, etc. There have been too many times where I've overestimated my own energy levels, right? I got out of my night class and I was like, all right, I'm going to go home and do all the things. And then later I made food for myself and then I fell asleep instead. So keep these things in mind and be as realistic as possible. First, you'll want to examine higher order issues because they are usually worth more points as well, like organization and evidence in your paper, and then the lower order concerns such as grammar. Then, if you have time, get additional feedback to any feedback that you may have already gotten. If you don't have time, don't worry about it. Just try to do this if you do have time. Then after that, you can make a list of everything that you want to work on if you had ample amounts of time. Also during this stage, try not to make corrections, even if it's feeling like, okay, I'm getting something done by making these small corrections. You need to focus on higher order concerns first because that's where you want to spend your energy, because that's where you're going to get the most points as well. Again, look at what matters the most on your assignment sheet and or rubric and determine what will benefit you the most from spending your valuable time on. If you've received feedback from your instructor, then usually you'll want to work on these items because instructors usually point out the big things first, especially on rough drafts. This would also be a great opportunity to have a tutor look over your paper and consult with them about larger issues. Once you've assessed the situation by answering these questions, you can start to make smart, deliberate decisions about what to prioritize and how to invest your time, energy, and resources for maximum revision and proofreading effectiveness. Strategies for revision and proofreading. Here's an example of a triage mindset. So this is my example. Today's Monday, and this paper or this project is due Friday at midnight. I've got a really difficult quiz on Tuesday that I need to study for, and so it says I have a paper due Thursday and it's almost done. Yeah, it's about half done. I kind of overestimated that. So it's about half done and it's due Thursday. I work Tuesday night this week, but I also have no class on Thursday after 3 p.m. Now I know I need to work on my introduction, my conclusion, evidence, spelling and punctuation, APA format, my unclear thesis, which is feedback that my professor gave me, and my supporting points. But my thesis evidence, and organization, all worth 20%, count the most toward my grade, and spelling and grammar is only worth 5%. Therefore, I have some time to work on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and all day on Friday. I've determined that I need to work on my thesis, evidence, and organization because that is worth 75% of my grade, which is a huge chunk. So I prioritize working on my thesis, organization, transitions between points, evidence for my second point in this paper, and then improve my introduction because all of these are vital to earning a good grade on this project. If I have time, I could address my conclusion, APA format, and spelling and punctuation, but I might not have time. What should you take away from this presentation? Effective writing requires substantial revision and openness to making those large-scale changes. You should leave time to proofread, but if you don't, try it next time. This does take practice. It's a process. The more you plan ahead, the easier the writing process will be and less stressful. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. If you have any questions, please make an appointment with the Writing Center. Thanks.